I'm Fallon.
I'm Sam.
I'm Connor. We are running on empty. This is our second chapter video. We're doing chapter 8, and it's all about managing teamwork and setting your team up to succeed with one another.
Yeah, we're special. We get 2 videos. So the first thing that the chapter really touches on is what's the difference between a team and a group. A group has a set leader with individuals who work and get evaluated separately. So there's more roles in a group. A team is a set of people who share leadership and work on getting to an objective together. I would say for instance, like for us, we're more of a team than a group. We may have like set roles, but everybody contributes evenly. Everyone shows up. There's no conflict of who needs to do what. So I would say that we're more of a team because we're working towards the same goal.
So, the first part of the chapter talked about, it was the group structure dimensions, which focuses a lot on the group types. There's formal versus informal. Formal is actually an actual part of an organization, so it could be departments and their sub-departments. Informal is not a formal part of an organization. It has to do with the way people interact in the social structures or similar interests, stuff like that. There's also functional and cross-functional group types. Functional performs jobs in one certain area, so that could be a work unit or a department. And then cross-functional is dealing with different areas and levels of an organization. So different types of managers, the higher-ups and the lower-ups kind of are cohesive in a cross-functional group. There's also command versus task groups. Command groups are managers and employees, the managers and the employees that they supervise. So these people are usually hired to be a part of the group. It could be, for example, a NASCAR pit crew because they're all hired to help out the driver. A task group is where the employees are selected to work on a specific objective, so they have a set goal. And then there's also a newer type of group that is becoming more common. It's called a global virtual team, where people work together from different places all over the world. This is becoming more readily available with technology. And then there was,
You were going to talk about Dr. Gower.
oh yeah. Okay. An example for the global virtual team is when Dr. Gower emailed us earlier in the semester, and she was talking about how she has to work with people from like all over the country and world. So that was one example that we came up with for that. And then the next point is group size. There really is no set group size. It depends on the task and the job at hand, whether it's a group or a team, because usually teams have more people than groups.
Okay, and then the next part was the composition, and is a mix of the members' skills and abilities without the right mix of skills, you won't perform at a higher level. So like if you have all the people that have like the same skills, you need like diversity, I guess. And then the group leadership and objectives is most of the time a leader determines a group structure and the success of a team. The objectives tend to be very broad, usually to fulfill a mission, and a leader should be sure the size and composition of a group or team is appropriate for the situation.
After group structure, the next thing to talk about would be the group process. So the first part of the group process would be the group roles. So there's 3 main roles that are touched in the textbook. Group task roles, which are made by members who do and say things to aid in accomplishing the group's objectives. So they're kind of the ones helping and saying things that are going to get things done, making, words of encouragement. Group maintenance roles are people in the group who do and say things to develop and sustain the group's process and cooperative behavior. Basically, if a group's working well together, they just continue doing what they're doing to make sure that the group stays working well together. And then the last one is self-interest, and these are kind of the pests of the group. They don't, they're only doing what benefits them and doesn't benefit the team. So really, it might be helping them in the short run, but it's going to hurt them in the long run because it's hurting the group for their actions.
Okay, and then the group norms are expectations about the behavior that are shared by members of a group. And the norms are developed usually as members interact with each other, and they can change over time to meet the needs of the group. But if someone isn't following like the group norms, they can become like an outlier, and like groups kind of annoyed with them, I guess. And group norms can be positive by helping the group meet the objectives, or negative by hindering them.
And the next part within the group process is group cohesiveness. And group cohesiveness is simple as each member having each other's back and building that sense of loyalty so that you guys are all working together towards the same goal, and teamwork is more important than personal success inside. And you're really committed to a high level of cohesiveness if you're a good group, and especially if you're a good manager, because low levels of cohesiveness means that each member of the group is thinking about themselves, and selfishness doesn't really achieve much in the long run. And factors that go into cohesiveness are objective, where everyone is focused on one goal. And then next is success. Once people start seeing the success, then it helps build up that camaraderie. Next is size. This is an important factor because groups that are larger tend to be a little bit less cohesive. But again, good managers always find a way around that and will make it work inside of large groups. It's a lot easier to do in small groups because there's a lot less personalities to take into account. But, it's all relative to the group. The next factor is homogeny, making sure that everyone's on the same page. The next is participation. If someone is not pulling their weight, that will not help the cohesiveness of the group at all. And one that I did not think about when I was reading the chapter, but makes a lot of sense in building cohesion, is competition. If there is a unifying force for everyone to rally around, then people will feel much more like needed within the group if they're all united against something. So cohesion is very important in the group process.
And next would be organizing a meeting. There are specific ways to organize a meeting that are most productive for the organization. So when you're planning a meeting, you need to let the people who that meeting has to do with, you have to let them know that they need to be at the meeting. One thing that has created less of a need for meetings is email. You can just email about things nowadays, and usually you don't have to meet, but they are still necessary for certain situations. So make sure that you state objectives when planning a meeting. Kind of tell the participants like what needs to be done and by when the meeting is, and state a date, place, and a time, so people know where and when to meet. Then, I mentioned that technology, that email eliminates the need for meetings, but technology can also be distracting. So make sure to have set rules on what technology is and isn't allowed, because sometimes people will be on their phones during a meeting doing personal things. So it's important to state the plan for your meeting. And conducting a meeting is also very important. The chapter focused on the first meeting where you should introduce yourself. You should also state the objectives, and you should assign roles for your group, as well as the topic of discussion, what you all want to get done in further group meetings. The 3 parts of a meeting are identifying your objectives, like I stated. So review your progress to date, what's happened in previous meetings. And then next, you should cover the agenda items. So when you plan your meeting, just go over everything that you promised in that email or however you get that information out. And then the third part is summarizing. The third part is summarizing and reviewing your assignments. So what needs to be done for the next meeting, kind of go over that and make sure everyone knows what's up.
And then to kind of wrap everything up, there's always like a downside to everything. So in conclusion, like there's always problem members. There's always a person that doesn't talk or doesn't want to contribute or just doesn't show up, which thankfully all of us contribute pretty evenly, so we don't have to deal with that. The talker, somebody that just kind of takes over the meeting and just kind of ignores what everybody else is trying to say. And then the wanderer, I would say that's me in the group, kind of brings up other subjects while we're trying to get something done. And then there's always a slacker, somebody that may contribute but doesn't contribute as much as everybody else.
Except not really with this.
Yeah.
We all kind of contribute the same. So.
And then just to kind of retouch on something, in a group, even if we have these problem members, we have to do decision making and conflict resolution. So an easy way to go through decision making or a problem is to go through the decision making process, which is what we touched on in our first video. And then conflicts, it just hurts everybody in the cohesiveness of the group. So, these problem team members can cause conflicts, and it needs to be nipped in the butt, like, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So, but that is pretty much, like, chapter 8 was a pretty broad and easy.
Short and to the point.
Yeah, short and to
but
the
a lot
point.
of important.
Lots of important information.
Yeah.
But
So we hope you know what the difference between a team and a group is.
Stages.
Oh.
Oh yes, the stages.
We forgot something. So
Add that in right now.
little shoehorn. What we forgot was the stages of group development, and this all comes down to building a solid foundation at the very beginning with forming good habits, positive norms, and working towards your goal with that in mind. So, first step, forming. Forming is when there's low development and the manager really has to take the reins and make sure that everything is ready to go from the beginning. Second part, storming. So the team is starting to form, roles are starting to be filled, and hopefully you can get through this phase quickly. Managers are doing more listening now because you don't want to completely control your group the entire way through. And individuals are doing more to reach the goal instead of you having to just always worry about what they're doing. So the third part of development is norming. Norming is when hopefully your group has reached a level of development where work is beginning to get done and you are participating with ideas as a manager more and more to help reach that goal. You're not worried about the structure as much anymore. And the fourth step is performing. And hopefully you reach this as soon as possible because this is when the group is fully developed and the goal is getting closer and closer to being met. And here as a manager, you really want to empower your employees so that they know that what they're doing is right and work can still move forward. And last but not least is termination. Termination, no more need for management because the goal's been met, and the team can go back to doing whatever else they were doing.
So now we're done.
Now we are
Now
So
we're done.
sorry we went out of order, and Connor in his phone.
That wasn't even
That was
my
my
phone.
phone.
That was my phone.
Okay,
Sorry
Grace's
about that.
phone.
Learn some teamwork, guys.